On January 21st, 2016, at 8 p.m., Prince walked into a darkened room at Paisley Park and made a stage by stripping almost everything away. No band, no elaborate machinery, no wall of spectacle between himself and the people in front of him. There was a purple piano, a microphone, a carefully shaped room, and Prince himself. Carpets, candles, low light, and the hush of a soundstage remade Paisley Park as something closer to a chamber of witness than a concert venue. My claim is that the 8 p.m. piano and a microphone gala works as performed autobiography. Prince uses the room, his spoken interludes, his reworking of songs at the piano, and the presence of the audience to narrate a life in real time. Rather than presenting autobiography as stable prose, neatly ordered and fixed on the page, he brings it into being through performance. That distinction matters, especially beside the beautiful ones, Prince's unfinished memoir. The book gives us childhood, family, emergence, and artistic consciousness in prose. The Gala gives us something else, life writing as breath, timing, silence, revision, vocal grain, and audience response. On the page, Prince narrates from retrospective authorship. At Paisley Park, he selects, jokes, hesitates, remembers, revises, confesses, sings, and reorders memory in front of witnesses. The primary record of the early show is not an official film or live album, but the Purple Stream scrapbook, a fan-curated document that gathers transcripts, images, context, and reflection. I read the Gala through that scrapbook as both performance and posthumous trace. Prince assembled a life in public. Others preserved the traces of that self-assembly so it would not disappear. The evening begins, strikingly, with scale rather than triumph. Prince's opening image is not genius declared from above, but childhood remembered from below. A 3-year-old standing before an instrument that seems larger than life. The piano looks bigger at 3 years old. It is a small line, plain on the surface, but it does deep autobiographical work. We are given perception before achievement. The memory is bodily. The child is small. The instrument is enormous. Prince begins with what it felt like to stand there before he explains what any of it meant. That childhood scene darkens almost at once. Here comes Dad. Not supposed to touch it, and I want to play it so bad, he says. And then, with startling bluntness, him and Mom are getting divorced now. I'm actually happy to see you go, but I was only 7 years old. But now I can play piano anytime I want. In a few lines, prohibition, grief, relief, guilt, and desire collapse into one another. The divorce arrives not as polished wisdom spoken from a safe distance, but as shards of remembered feeling. His father's leaving is pain, and it is also access. The piano opens. Prince frames the instrument as more than the tool of his future art. It becomes a place where private fracture is converted into possibility. From family rupture, the performance moves outward into radio. Prince remembers when radio was localized, and he names Minneapolis DJs with affection and precision. Jack Harris, he says, would choose what we would listen to, and he had great taste. The detail matters because it pushes back against the myth of the self created genius. Prince is telling a story about a life shaped by listening, by local culture, by the public texture of sound. Radio becomes a curriculum. It teaches taste, feeling, selection, attention. It gives him a world to hear before he has a world to master. That section leads into one of the clearest autobiographical statements of the night. After sketching his early relation to radio and performance, Prince says, "No, I gotta write some songs. That's how I'm gonna get out of here." And then, a little later, I was on my own, trying everything I could to find out who I was. That line sits near the center of the Gala's self portrait. Songwriting becomes more than career strategy. It functions as a mode of self making. To write is to search. To compose is to test the edges of identity. The self is not treated as something stable and already formed, waiting for expression. It emerges through experiment. That is why the baby moment matters so much. Prince lets the audience hear him thinking in real time. Need a change there. Almost, almost, there it is. For a few seconds, revision becomes audible. He lets form show its seams. The Gala is autobiographical in content, yes, but it is autobiographical in method too. Prince shows how feeling gets worked into shape. The next movement turns toward erotic freedom, and again he resists simplification. After Do Me Baby, he says, "When you're totally free, a song like that is going to go on and on." But freedom does not remain, for him, a matter of appetite or spectacle. The reflection deepens almost immediately. He imagines candlelight, a favorite song, a loved one nearby, and then adds, "You have 992 arguments, and you hope that both of you are still alive when the 993rd one starts." What enters here is intimacy stripped of spectacle, not seduction performed for display, but relation in its difficult, sustaining, vulnerable life. That is why his later freedom speech carries so much weight. When you have the right to make up your own mind, then you can choose to say no sometimes. In this performance, freedom means neither endless access nor unlocked permission. It takes the form of sovereignty, discernment, and the right to refuse. The middle of the evening then complicates any easy idea of singular genius. Prince keeps naming other people: Scotty Baldwin, Joni Mitchell, David Bowie, Miles Davis, and, most movingly, Lisa Coleman and Wendy Melvoin. He remembers Lisa in the basement, making up crazy chords, and his own surprise at what she could hear. That matters because the autobiographical self he composes is porous. It is shaped through encounter, admiration, challenge, exchange. Prince's account of genius is not solitary or sealed off from others. Collaboration enters the life story as one of the conditions that made the work possible. His father returns at this point in one of the evening's most affecting lines. "I thought I would never be able to play like my dad, and he never missed an opportunity to remind me of that. But we got along good. He was my best friend." What gives the passage its force is the compression of contradiction. His father is standard, rival, wound, teacher, and beloved companion at once. Prince neither reduces that complexity to resentment nor resolves it into sentimental closure. He leaves the tangle intact, and the result feels truer. From there, the performance opens into dream. Prince asks, How many of you have lucid dreams? Then he says, some of my friends have passed away, and I see them in my dreams. So it's like they are here, and the dreams are just like waking sometimes. At that point, the evening shifts from ordinary recollection into visitation. The dead return through dream, imagination, and the strange realism of grief. Time loosens. Presence and absence sit in the same room. That is part of why the turn into Sometimes It Snows in April lands with such force. The song was already haunted within Prince's catalog. Here it becomes part of a larger meditation on friendship, mortality, and recurrence. The performance blurs any clean line between past and present, suggesting that memory keeps unfolding rather than settling into place. The past visits, interrupts, wakes beside us. The treatment of grief does not stay private for long. It widens into public witness with Baltimore, one of the Gala's most important structural turns. Prince asks, how many Americas are there? 2, 3, 10? He names Michael Brown and Freddie Gray. He insists that peace is more than the absence of war. This expands the autobiography rather than digressing from it. Prince makes clear that a life honestly told has to reckon with the historical world that formed it and wounded it. That turn keeps the Gala from collapsing into nostalgia or private confession. The performance risks public speech. It treats music as a form of witness. Even here, Prince lets the songs hold what statement alone cannot. The last movement of the evening passes through breakdown toward liberation. The breakdown brings collapse, regret, exposed need, and the longing for a door where there used to be a wall. In the architecture of the show, it clears emotional ground. What follows feels like revelation. That revelation arrives with Anastasia, where the autobiographical, the spiritual, and the communal gather in one place. Prince begins with loneliness. Have you ever been so lonely that you felt like you were the only one in this world? The question is intimate and hard to hear without flinching. Yet, the song moves through isolation toward declaration. Through it all, remaining free, I found out that God was love. All along, God was love. That line gathers the evening behind it. The ending does not erase childhood hurt, erotic searching, artistic striving, collaboration, dream, grief, or political witness. It gathers them into itself. Prince's theology does not escape the world. It becomes a language capacious enough to hold life's pain and beauty together. Then the performance turns outward again. God is love, love is God, followed by the repeated cry, liberate me. At this point, the Gala stops sounding merely autobiographical and starts to sound liturgical. The audience is asked to sing. Witness becomes participation. The room is folded into the final claim. Liberation here is musical, emotional, spiritual, and collective all at once. The transcendence remains embodied, a release carried through the body, the voice, and relation. This changes the audience's role. We do not simply observe the event from the outside, we become implicated in its making. The room's attention, laughter, hush, and recognition become part of the autobiographical form itself. Prince marks that relation late in the performance when he says, it's better with you all present. The self assembled in the Gala takes shape through relation, becoming legible only in contact with others. The Purple Stream scrapbook preserves that fact. Its transcript matters, of course, but so does the aura of care around it, the afterlife devotion that made preservation necessary. The gala was more than a set list. It became an occasion of witness, and those present felt compelled to keep that witness from vanishing. So, my closing claim is this. On January 21st, 2016, Prince used the 8 p.m. piano and a microphone gala to practice life writing by other means. He made memoir out of scene, spacing, anecdote, harmony, invocation, and testimony. He began with the child standing before the oversized piano. He moved through divorce, radio, self invention, erotic ethics, collaboration, the father who was both wound and friend, dream, grief, public witness, and spiritual release. Rather than recounting a life already settled into story, he composed that life in the present tense. Because it happened at Paisley Park, before a room of witnesses, inside the house most closely identified with his artistic sovereignty, it carries a rare force. The feeling of watching someone write a life while still living it.